All right, good morning. How's it going? Good, awesome. All right, so everyone know who this is? Anyone ever heard the best way to think about a public speech ever? Anyone know the answer? Franklin Delano Roosevelt. What did he tell his son about public speaking? Any ideas? He said, be sincere, be brief, and be seated. So that's my goal in the next 25 minutes. So you can hold me accountable to this. So let's dive right in. So my name's Nick. I'm with a company called Gainsight. We work with hundreds of subscription and recurring revenue businesses to help them drive more growth from their existing customers. And I want to share a bunch of stuff that we've learned over the time about how growth isn't just about new customers. And we have this metaphor that we use at Gainsight called turning the revenue funnel into an hourglass. But this morning I actually figured out that I'm going to relabel the speech because there's a hot new term out there in San Francisco. So how many of you have growth hackers? How many people have a growth hacker or are a growth hacker or admit they're a growth hacker? I know there's some here, admit it. And growth hacking is this kind of hot new area of how do you drive customer acquisition in very interesting ways. And I relabeled my speech 10 customer success growth hacks, because what I challenge you to do at the end of this is think of customer success not as a way to drive customer sat, although it'll do that, not as a way to understand your customers better, though it'll do that, not as a way to just feel better about your company, though it'll do that too, but as a way to drive growth. So at the end of this presentation, I actually have 10 things that I think you should consider doing, at least one of them, going back to your office in your companies. So with that, let's start just to level set a little bit with a few questions as a poll. So easy one, first one. If you're at a vendor, tech vendor, or you've worked at one, how many of you have had a customer success team or an account management team of some kind that works with your existing customers? Great, all right, awesome, cool. Okay, how many of you feel your companies are too successful already and you don't want to talk about customer success? Too much success already? Anyone? No, too much success. How many of you feel like your company is growing too fast and you just can't keep up and you don't want any more growth? No one, no too fast, all right, good. And then how much feel like you have just too much money and it's just flowing out and you don't want to deal with any more money, more problems if you guys get the reference? Anyone here? No? Okay, great. So we've got the right audience because I want to talk about how customer success, which sounds really nice and friendly, is actually all about growth and all about driving more money for your company. And if you're a CEO, you should think of customer success just like you think of customer acquisition. And so hopefully that's what I can convince you in the next 22 minutes here. So let's dive in. So before I talk about the 10 growth hacks for customer success, let's talk about why this is relevant right now. And I think every vendor at this conference has some version of this slide. Things are changing, right? And our version of that slide is that the world is changing because of changing business models. Old business models did not hold vendors accountable, right? So a vendor would sell something, they'd get a lot of money up front, and whether the customer got value or not, the vendor got the money. And so the vendor's success was fundamentally not aligned with the customer success. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but it's actually a massive significant thing that we should all internalize, because with the new world of subscription businesses, pay per transaction, increasing kind of freedom of choice for customers, customer success and vendor success are totally interlined. And what that means is that your growth depends on your customer success. And that's something I want to keep reinforcing throughout this presentation. So that's kind of the high level. I think everyone probably gets that, right? Well, let's dive in further. So in the old economy where you sold something and you kind of got the money up front, how did your customer lifecycle work? So I'm sure everyone has a slide on how it should have worked, but here's how it actually worked. I worked at a big software company for a long time. Here's how it actually worked. We're at the vendor, right? We got all the money up front. So when we interact with the customer, it's to get something. Can I get a reference? Can you do a case study for me? You ready to buy more? Do you want to renew? And by the way, who are you again? Because I actually have lost track of who you are, and you've changed a lot, right? But I care a lot about you, actually, because you're the most important thing to me, because the customer is number one, right? I don't know how many people have felt like that in past companies, but that's really how the world worked for a long time. And I'm not here to criticize that, because frankly, that funded a lot of wealth in Silicon Valley, a lot of private jets and yachts, and it's pretty cool, right? But the world is different. It's just different. Whether you like it or not, it's changed. And our view, and I think a lot of people here, it's not just us, is the customer really is at the center now. That's not just a kind of a nice thing that a CEO says to make the customer feel better. they really are at the center. And there's a life cycle from the time you get that customer to them adopting your service, renewing, growing, et cetera. And so you got to really rethink what growth means in that model. And that's what I'm hoping to share with you today. So let's talk about this metaphor that I want to change, right? So how many of you have seen a B2B revenue funnel? Everyone, right? Everyone knows the B2B revenue funnel. Look at that funnel and what's the first impression you get? It looks like marketing's job is really hard, right? Because there's a lot of stuff up there at the top. And then sales is pretty hard because you got to catch all those things. And the bottom just takes care of itself, right? Because it's kind of the easy part, right? It's the bottom of the funnel. It looks really easy. And frankly, I think a lot of companies have been influenced by this metaphor to put more weight at the top than the bottom, and I hope to change that. And that's kind of, I think the visual metaphors, if you're a CEO, make a big difference. Our argument is that the funnel should be an hourglass. And I know it sounds like a dumb, simple, cheesy idea. I think it's massive. The idea is basically that you're going to get as much growth from your existing customers as you are from your new customers. Now, if you have 0 customers, that's obviously not true, right? Because you couldn't get any growth from your existing customers. But as you grow, and as you take more and more of that greenfield customer base and you get them, your growth is going to come from your customers. There's just no doubt about it. It's formulaic. And yet we, in the past, have said that, look, if you're responsible for customers at your company, your job is that little tiny thing at the bottom, right? If you're an account manager, customer support, customer success, services, your job's that little thing at the bottom. Great job, keep going. We're working on offshoring your job and outsourcing and automating it, but great job, right? And the people at the top get the glory, they ring the gong, and they're the people that get paid a lot. And our argument is that really needs to change. That the bottom of the funnel, customer success, is the key to growing fast. And I think you all probably get that at some level, but let me just hit it home. There's a lot of research out there that shows that companies that actually can acquire customers and then grow within those customer bases grow much, much faster. And it's kind of obvious, right? If you acquire customers at this level, and then if each of those customers are growing, your slope of your growth is going to go up a lot, right? And so there's no doubt that if you want to be a high growth company, you can't just grow by acquiring customers. That's like number one. Number two, Goldman Sachs did a research study about a year ago, and publicly traded recurring revenue businesses that have a higher retention rate have a higher multiple. And so what that means is not only do you grow faster, but you actually get valued more. So it's actually a double value. Third thing, which is really interesting, is that if you retain more of your dollars that you acquire, you can actually spend more to acquire customers because your lifetime value of your customers is higher. So therefore, not only can you actually grow faster and be worth more, but you can invest more in growth. So, again, this is kind of all hopefully obvious at this point. I think most people in the room understand this. Question is, how do you actually go do that? But before I get to that, let me just show you a couple other ways to think of this metaphor. And how many people know who Aaron Ross is? Aaron Ross wrote this book called Predictable Revenue. It's a great, if you do cold calling or inside sales, it's kind of the Bible of that. And he just wrote a new book, which we helped him with, where he talks about the 3 engines of growth. And it's just a different metaphor where he talks about spears being growing through new acquisition, nets being growing through bringing inbound leads in, and then seeds being growing from your existing customers, either through word of mouth, through land and expand, through retaining your customers. And that's just another way to think about what we're talking about here. And a third way to think about it is how many people see in Spinal Tap? The reality that I talk to CEOs and I say, what's your retention rate? And they say, oh, we're doing great, 90% retention rate. I'm like, dude, or dudette, your retention rate can go much higher than 100%. The best companies retain 120, 130% of their revenue by upselling into their installed base. And so retention can be more than your existing base, and that's an important concept to think about. So let's dive in and go through the 10 growth hacks that'll get you more revenue from your existing customers with that big setup. Okay, so to put these into context, we actually created this model at Gainsight called the Customer Success Maturity Model. And the idea is that not every company is ready for the same investment in customer success. When you're getting started and you have a new business, it's really just about driving adoption in your company, right? Driving more people to use whatever you have, right? And that's great. Once you got a bunch of people and they're coming up for renewals and they're at that cycle of do I stay or do I go, it starts becoming about retention. Once you have that installed base and you've sold a lot of people that stuff, you're now thinking about how do I land and expand? How do I cross-sell? How do I kind of grow my existing revenue? Now, once you have a lot of people doing that, you're starting to think about optimization. Like, how do I get more out of the people that I have, and how do I cut the costs in this area? And then over time, hopefully customer success becomes truly strategic for you. And it's really a strategic advisor to your clients. So think about customer success in different phases based on where you are in your evolution. The 10 things I'm going to show you, I think apply almost across the board, and we'll kind of highlight each one. So let's start. Number one. Actually, I think this is the most important one, so I should have done it last. What is your pitch for customer success? So I want to go listen to all your sales pitches from your sales reps, and I want to hear how many times they talk about your customer success program. So you guys all sell products and services. How many people talk about your customer success program in your sales pitch? So a few people, that's great. If I go to your websites, will I see a video or landing page about your customer success team? So it sounds like a couple people. Are there great slides about your customer success team? Is it a differentiator? Because the reality is, almost everyone in this room has competitors. Products kind of do a lot of similar stuff, no matter how much we love them, right? Your customer success team can be a differentiator. So growth hack number one is grow faster by marketing your customer success team. So on your website, in your video, on your PowerPoint presentation, talk about customer success and talk about how you're not just selling a product, you're going to drive success for your customer. If you want to get extra credit, in that sales pitch, so you're going to pitch a CIO or a head of sales or your target customer, tell them that you are going to schedule a meeting 6 months after the initial sale, and you're going to come back and review the success that you've driven. Tell them that you're actually going to show them the success that you've driven 6 months from then, and kind of sign up and even calendar that meeting. So really make sure that it's part of your sales process. That's number one. I think it's a really big potential differentiator. Number two, think about customer success like a sprint where the very beginning matters a ton, right? So why do sprinters stand on starting blocks, right? They're trying to get as much explosion out of their calves and their legs as they can at the beginning of the race because it makes a big difference, right? And I think most people understand, but customer success starts from the time they sign that contract. And what's funny about companies is we've gotten really good at moving fast to get a deal done, right? All of us probably are really good at doing everything possible to get a deal done. And you get that echo sign or that DocuSign, you ring the gong, and it's exciting. Does that velocity stay at the same level once you got the contract signed? Do you guys keep the same energy up to say, how are we going to get the customer to value? You probably measure your sales cycle, but do you measure your time to value? And I don't mean measure your time to value like, our customers get live in a few weeks. I mean like the average customer is getting live in this many days, and this customer went past that. And the best customers within the first 17 days are doing activities X, Y, and Z and monitoring the people that haven't done those. How many of you guys do that? How many of you are thinking of it like a sprinter versus thinking of it like a marathoner where you get started and you just kind of keep running? The reality is the scrutiny from your customer is very high from day one. So that's the second growth hack I'd encourage you to think about. Third one, okay, so people buy your products and services for lots of reasons, right? They buy them to drive more revenue, to make their employees happier, make their customers happier. How many of you understand the goal of every individual customer that you have? I don't mean the high-level goal on your website. I don't mean the benefits on your data sheet. I mean the actual goal of that customer. And I don't just mean you, I mean your employees. So if I go to the customer success manager or the sales rep at one of your prospects or customers, could I ask them, what's the actual goal of this customer? Not in our language, but in theirs. So it'd be another question to ask yourself. How many of your team members would be able to answer that? By the way, if it's in your language, it's probably wrong. So if I said, we sell customer success software, and some of my reps, I'll say, what's the goal of this customer? They say, their goal is to try to reduce churn by 50% while driving upsell using an early warning system. And I was like, that's straight off our website. That's not their goal. They have a different goal, right? What's their goal? And how many of you understand that goal and religiously write it down? So when you have that sale, are you figuring out what that goal is and capturing it? Because it's going to be really valuable later, which I'll talk about. Bunch of ways you can capture it. You could survey the customer directly. You could actually have a kickoff success meeting. If you have a higher touch business, we recommend this. So right after you sign that deal, have a 30-minute call and just ask one question of the customer. Thank you for buying our product or service. What does massive success mean to you? Massive success. What is it? paint the picture, massive success. A year from now, I want to be able to deliver massive success. Tell me what that means. Not in my words, in your words. So that's the third growth hack. Fourth one. So how many people have either heard or been on a call where you hear an account manager or CSM say the following? Hey, this is Nick from Gainsight. This is so-and-so from my company. I'm just calling to check in and see how you're doing. Just checking in. How many people have seen the check-in call? Heard the check-in call? Ban the check-in call. Ban the check-in call. Because customers don't want the check-in call anymore. They expect you to know what they're doing and what value they're getting. They don't want to talk to you about how things are going in general. They want you to come, sorry about that. They want you to come with value. They want you to call them and say, hey, I know you bought our product for this goal, and I see that you're driving these results, and other customers are driving more results. How can we help you drive those more results? When you call and say, I'm checking in, you're basically saying, I have no freaking clue who you are. I have no idea who you are. Hi, Acme Corporation, we love you. Just want to check in and see how things are going. I've gotten that check-in call before from vendors. I know what that means. By the way, it probably means they're about to ask me for an upsell or a renewal or a reference. You know, they're about to use me. So it's ban the check-in call. Every time you hear it in your office, you have an open office, I'd encourage you to go and you have some ritual. Maybe you all like ring a bell or you all kind of blow a horn or something. Check-in call is not valuable. Next thing, define the scoreboard for your customer, the scorecard, the measurement system for each customer. Take those goals that you captured up front, define how you're going to measure them, just like you have your own goals internally, and then have a regular process to review them with the customer. Because here's the problem. You sell something to somebody, right? And maybe you have an annual contract, 2 years, whatever. A year later, how often is that somebody still there? And that new person, who's unfortunately often a CFO, procurement person, saying, why do we even need this thing? And they don't remember why they bought it, and the person that bought it isn't there anymore. Define that goal up front, every quarter, every month, whatever the frequency, reinforce that goal and come back to the client with a scoreboard that says, here's why you bought, here's what we're delivering. 2 questions. Is that still why you bought? Do we have it right? Are we delivering what we say we're delivering? You know what? That makes the renewal a lot easier. Because now you have, maybe if you do quarterly, you have 4 check-in points where you've said, here's what you wanted, here's what we did, and you agreed. Now when you try to nickel and dime me for a renewal and reduce the price or whatever, I can say, look, I'm delivering the results you asked for. What more do you want, right? So define a scorecard and review it with the client on a regular basis. Next, remember that you are not just selling to a company, you're selling to people. And so I challenge you to define 3 people, if you sell to enterprises, 3 people at every customer that you're going to interact with. And I'd actually identify 3 people in your company, if you're big enough, they're going to reach out to them. So don't just have your CSM or account manager reach out to Joe or Sally every month and see how things are going. Identify Joe, Sally, and Bob, the 3 people that matter in your company, and have 3 people in your company reach out to them and build a relationship. It's hard to do, but you can systematize it and make it regular. And then if Joe, Sally, or Bob leave, you've got somebody else to deal with. It's a kind of basic concept, but I can't tell you how many companies become single-threaded where they just have one contact. Next, out of those people, identify your raving fans. Who are the people that are really going to go to bat for you? And there's simple ways to do it, right? You send a survey. Everyone focuses on the negatives in the survey, the lowest net promoter scores. What about the people that give you 9 or 10? Right there, they give you a 9 or 10. Send them a bottle of wine. Send them a thank you gift card, a donation to charity, and then invite them to be a reference. Invite them to speak to your conference. You know what's funny? If you get people to advocate on your behalf, they become more satisfied. Not the other way around. Obviously, everyone knows that satisfied people will probably advocate on your behalf. If satisfied people advocate on your behalf, they become more satisfied. They become part of your company. They're your fans. So promote and advocate your fans. Next, when you think about upsell in your installed base, because it's not just about renewals and retention, think about speed. So you have a product, maybe it's licensed by users, or maybe you have 2 products. The time to go from that initial sale to the upsell is a lot on you. It's about how fast you deploy, how fast they adopt, and every month that you slip in deployment or usage is a month slip in the sales cycle. So how many people like slipping a sales cycle? Nobody, right? And yet, we kind of let it go when the adoption is slower or the deployment is slower. And we don't have that same sales mentality. Yet adoption is going to lead you to faster upsell. So think about it in terms of speed. Next, deliver an early warning system internally. And that's what Gainsight does, so obviously it's self-serving. But even if you do it manually, figure out the early triggers where there is risk in that account. And I don't just mean usage, because frankly, people don't just buy your product to use it. They buy it to drive value. So I mean all the different signs of disengagement, from people giving you low feedback on surveys, to long support cases that get closed but the customer is really frustrated, people that stopped attending your webinars, unsubscribed to your emails, all those signs that you've kind of lost that customer, and figure out a way to do something about it. And last one, what's this a picture of? Anyone? Gong. Okay, how many people have a gong? Tell me that folks have a gong in the office for sales. No, nobody has a gong? Okay, few gongs. Okay, buy a gong for customer success, and make that gong bigger. In our office, the top one is the sales gong and the bottom one is the customer success gong, because you send a subtle message, right? Which is, right now, what's the message CEOs send? Sales is all that matters. The initial sale is all that matters. But if you believe customer success can be a growth driver, celebrate that expansion, that adoption, that reference, that renewal, that advocate, just as much as you celebrate that new deal. This thing can make a big difference. It can really change the way people in your company operate. So to summarize, I've got my 10 here, so you can have them in the slides afterwards, and we kind of walk through all of them. And what I challenge you to do is pick any of these to start with. I think very few companies are doing all of these. I think every one of these could have a material impact on your company. What does Gainsight do? We build software to help with all this, obviously. And bottom line is we build software to help companies grow faster. Our early customers have actually driven eight points of net additional growth. And this is on businesses of 100 million and higher in many cases. So lots of revenue, while actually scaling their team more efficiently by figuring out which customers to interact with. And we do that through a bunch of stuff like bringing all the data together about your customers, analyzing what's happened with those customers, and then automating the workflow to manage that customer lifecycle. The other thing we do at Gainsight is help teach people about this, because frankly, this is new. All of this is pretty relatively new. And, some old concepts, but a lot of it's still pretty new. So we have this great resource center online that gives you information on how to structure your team. Should they report to sales or services? How do you compensate them? We run this big conference. Unfortunately, it was last week, but we'll run it again next year. Videos will be online. We had 900 people there last week, all about best practices in driving growth through customer success. And what was really cool, we had the CEO of Marketo, Viva Systems, SurveyMonkey, Evernote. This area is strategic. And so that's something, those folks, believe in this, and hopefully a lot of you do as well. So with that, let me pause for a couple questions. We've got a couple minutes for questions. So questions from the audience.
My name is Mike Bell. I'm with Invisio, and we're actually experimenting right now with applying, taking your Hourglass and turning it upside down. So when we get prospects in the sandbox, we're actually getting customer success people in there playing with them, and then letting them know that when you're ready to convert, I'll be the one that'll help you through the implementation process. And I'm wondering if you've had any experience with that, and any comments you can make on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. If I had more time, I would have talked about that as part of driving growth. I think getting CSMs in the sales process is a great idea. The question is going to be workload balancing and scalability, because a CSM will have a lot of tasks with existing customers, and then sales cycles can be a little unpredictable in some cases, as you guys probably all know. So that's the only challenge, but we've actually been doing it. We bring our CSMs into our sales cycle maybe one time, so not the whole sales cycle, but it's been really effective. So good question. In the back.
Hi, Nick. Great presentation.
Thanks.
I got a two-part question, the easy part and the hard part.
I'll just do the easy part.
The easy one rides on the previous question. So who are really these customer success managers? Are they part of sales? Are they part of marketing? Or are we creating a whole new silo that lives off the marketing budget?
Great question. Yeah. Long term, I think it's actually a new silo. So just bottom line, but I'm super biased. So obviously take it with a grain of salt. But I really think that in the future, you'll have marketing, sales, and customer success. Today, most people have it report into either services and support or in sales. I actually don't think it matters massively either way. It's more about the people you have, as long as the person it reports into is thinking about growth. So the only way you can fail at this is to just relabel customer support customer success. If that's what you've done, That's cool. Actually, it's a bad idea for your CEO because all you've done is raise the salaries of your people because they're all going to get called by recruiters. That's the only thing you've done. If you want to do it, make a change, have it report into somebody who cares about growth.
The second part, if I may. Having run a bunch of sales teams in the past, one of the challenges that I see, and I know you talked about, checking in is not customer success. It's a lot beyond that. And one of the challenges that I see is that salespeople are very reluctant to immerse themselves into some domain knowledge about the customer's business. I mean, there is a certain element of knowledge that you need if you're a pharma client versus a media client versus a telecom client. You need to know something about the domain of the customer before you can even ask intelligent questions. And Salesforce is very reluctant because they have blinders on. They're focused on their quotas. That's what matters to them, really. So how do you get over this hurdle about getting people interested in knowing about the customer's domain?
I think that's why, honestly, people are separating customer success from sales because a lot of sales DNA is exactly what you described. I think a great CSM is like a business consultant, and they understand the client's real business need. That's why it's a little different from sales for that reason. So that's a very good question. I don't know, do we have time for one more? Are we out? One more? All right. Last one.
What's your renewal sales? Put that in the CSMs, they're measured on that with a quota, or is that where the reps come in and
Yeah,
take it down?
we had a great discussion on this at our conference last week, and honestly, there's like two totally different points of view on this. So I think more, as companies get bigger, they tend to actually put more scrutiny on the ROI of the CSM, and so a lot of them are actually giving the CSM renewal responsibility as well. So that is happening in bigger. I think in the early days, it's worth separating it. Because I think in the early days, the adoption and success of your customer isn't just about the renewal, it's all the other stuff, the advocacy, the reference, et cetera. And if you're just focused on the renewal, you'll miss that. So if you're, I'd say sub 50 million, my recommendation is renewal and installed base sales and CSM hand in hand, but not the same person. All right, great. Awesome. Thanks so much. Here's to your success. Great.